They're not good enough to start. They're not even good enough to play. But they do talk a good game. So come join Lou and Jose from the sidelines where all the best sports discussions happen anyway. Welcome in to the Benchwarmerz podcast.
Welcome into the program, everybody. I am Lou Ruggieri. That is Jose Ortiz. And this is the Benchwarmerz podcast. Wherever, whenever, and however you happen to be listening, we appreciate you taking some time to spend it with us. We're going to try to make it worth your while. And we have a show and a half for you. Not really, it's one full show, but it's going to feel like a show and a half with all the extra super amounts of content we have. Hopefully, you're following us along on, we're part of the iHeartRadio podcasting lineup, very proudly so. Amazon Podcasts, part of that, newly formed little organization. Perhaps you've heard of them. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play. We're also on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram at the Benchwarmerz Podcast, at the BW Pod on Twitter. And you can email us if you'd like. The Benchwarmerz Podcast at yahoo.com. Benchwarmerz with a Z for marketing purposes. Coming up in the second hour, it's showtime in the NBA. NBA starting this week, so we have to get on with some predictions. We have to go over some new contract signings and our Western Conference preview. We have some 5 hot questions we're going to throw back and forth at one another and see. We also have to make our NBA Finals pick and our MVP pick, obviously in the preseason before it starts. So we're going to do that. Already Week 16 in the NFL, we're going to look back on Week 15 picks and make our Week 16 picks. It's I start getting depressed now because the season's almost over, but not yet. So in this hour, coming up in a little bit, we have our kind of a back-to-back segment for you, The Extra Point, which is our one-sentence recap of every game in the NFL this week, and also Make No Mistake or Give Me a Break, which is sort of our true-false segment. We're each going to throw 3 statements at one another, and we're going to say either make no mistake, absolutely, or come on, give me a break. That's ridiculous. Highlight of the week, low light of the week, and our moral lesson. But first, Jose, it's time. Let's jump right in. Top 5 news stories in the NFL, according to us. And right off the bat, our number 1 news story, and this is a first this season. The Jets. I don't
Why are you laughing? Why are you laughing at them?
I don't want to give away my extra point, but essentially it's only the Jets can win and still somehow lose. It's just the Jets win their first game. They shocked the Los Angeles Rams 23-20. And maybe the news story should be the Jacksonville Jaguars have just gained the biggest fan base in the country because half of all of New York is now going to be rooting for the Jacksonville Jaguars to win a game next week. I don't even know what to say. Like, why? What? Why would they do this?
Well, here's the thing. Okay, so first, I'm just going to address a couple things. One, yes, the Jacksonville Jaguars have just gained a whole state, or 2 because New Jersey people also root for the Jets sometimes as well. But 2, I'm against this sentiment that the Jets should have somehow been trying to lose. I don't. I get it. I understand what people are saying. Hey, you want to get Trevor Lawrence or whomever. Earlier this season, you talked to me about building a culture in your organization. You talked to me about the importance of building a winning culture in your organization. You know how you build a winning culture in your organization? Well, you certainly don't do it by purposely losing. Okay? So
you also don't do it by going 0-14 and then winning a game.
You go out there, you go out there with the intention of trying to win every game. Even if you're unsuccessful, you go out there and you try to win every game.
Yes.
I think you cheat the sport, you cheat the fans, you cheat yourselves when you go out there and you say, you know what? We're going to purposely lose so that way we can draft a player who we don't even know is going to end up being great. I guess you can say that he's going to be amazing, but listen, Marcus Mariota was a number 2 pick before. Jamarcus Russell was a number 1 pick before. We have seen Jameis Winston. We have seen probably more players bust from that position than succeed from that position. So the fact that I'm hearing people, the Jets should have purposely lost the game is like, no, they should not have purposely lost the game. They did what they're supposed to do. You play to win the game.
Thank
Chandler,
you,
my boy, Herman Edwards.
Well, here's, and to be fair, I do put this more on the Rams than I do on the Jets because You're right. I mean, organizationally, I think the Jets have kind of threw in the towel weeks ago. But the players still have pride. They still want to win. Frank Gore doesn't want to be on his last year possibly in an 0-16 team. Sam Darnold is fighting for his life out there, his career really.
Yeah.
I mean, Adam Gase. I mean, he's dead man walking. He doesn't care, so might as well. And it just feels like, organizationally, I think someone at the top should have just been like, hey, Adam, why don't we get Joe Flacco back out there and let's just let Sam Darnold kind of cool off for the rest of the like. There's ways that they could have gotten around this, but the bigger thing is that the Rams needed to win this game, and I don't know if they were looking past the Jets, and they just were. I mean, but there's no reason there from top to bottom. There is not one player on the Jets that would even really be starting for the Rams.
Well,
and the Rams coaching is better. Their skill positions are better. Their defense is unbelievably better. But it looked like they just switched uniforms in the locker room, and it was like the Rams looked like the Jets did, and the Jets looked like the Rams did. It was crazy.
I feel like the Rams are a team on offense that if they don't get into a flow early in the game, they struggle to turn on the light switch. They're not one of these teams that, we struggled for the first half, let's step on the gas and get the win now.
Yeah. That's
not them. It seems like they have to kind of come out of the gate clicking, and they just weren't. They were 2 for 11 on third down conversions, which against a terrible Jets team is completely inexcusable. You said the Jets management should have done something. Frank Gore is your starting running back. What else do you need to do?
Yeah.
You're the best receiver you have on the team is probably Jamison Crowder. I mean, let's be serious here. The management has done everything possible to get them to lose.
Yeah.
It's just hard to go 0-16. It sounds stupid to say that, but it's hard to go 0-16 when you have players out there playing for their careers. And that's really what it boils down to.
Yeah.
These guys some of them may not get contracts again next year. And they're going to be coaches are going to be looking at this tape and say, hey, well, why weren't you playing hard against the Rams in week 15? I was just taking a few plays off because we weren't supposed to win. That's not getting you another contract.
That's true. And I think the Rams, I think you're right. It seems like they kind of have this, I don't want to call it a fatal flaw, but they definitely have an Achilles heel where, Jared Goff is not a good, just straight up drop back passer. He excels off of play action, but to have an effective play action game, you need to establish the run early and often. And if that gets out of rhythm early, and the Cam Akers or Henderson or whoever's back there gets shut down a little bit, that they can't work off of play action. And then Jared Goff just looks, I don't know what happens to him. He's not, it's not even that he's not accurate, but he just doesn't make great decisions. And I feel like he gets nervous.
He's just not consistent. He's just inconsistent. He has one, he'll be good for a quarter, good for a drive, good for a game. But it's like, with the exception of the 1 year when they went to the Super Bowl, it seems like he struggles to put together long stretches of good play at the quarterback position, and the team suffers as a result. You talked about him, and I guess we shouldn't talk too much about the Rams and the Jets here, but I'll just say, you talk about him excelling in the play action. That seems to be the only area where he really excels as a passer. It just, like, if the guy's not wide open or if he's not on the move, he just doesn't consistently deliver quality throws.
Yeah. All right. So that's the top news story. I mean, who knew that the Jets would be a top news story this week? But they found a way, and that's why they play the game.
Yeah.
According to Boomer. The second story in our top 5 news stories this week actually also has to do with a team that's pretty bad coming out on top. The Cincinnati Bengals topped the once unbeaten Pittsburgh Steelers 27-17. The Bengals are now 3-10-1. The Steelers are on a 3-game skid. They're 11-3. And this game, Ben looked terrible. The Steelers might lose the division. These are things that we never even would have thought of. And the one I realized this the other day. The Steelers this year sort of remind me of what the Patriots were last year when they were 8-0. And it felt like, you couldn't argue the record. You are what your record says you are, just to keep quoting coaches. But when Baltimore came to town in New England last year, they just demolished the Patriots and kind of exposed them. And the Steelers, I don't know. I mean, the Redskins did it, and now this is 3 weeks in a row that the Steelers just look lost. And I don't really their running game is terrible, but the receivers should be good. Ben should be good, and they're just not.
Anytime your defense holds a quarterback to 89 yards passing, you should win that game.
Anytime you're playing against the quarterback named Ryan Finley, you should win that game. How about that? I'll help you out there.
Yeah, and you hit the nose on the nail on the head with the running game. They were outgained on the ground, 152 to 86. It felt like, with the exception of a few runs from Benny Snell, they just weren't very capable of running the ball. Their offensive line suddenly looks really bad. If you watch that game, that's something that it's not going to really show up in the box score. But if you watch that game, it felt like Ben had no time to throw, and then he wasn't doing himself any favors with his accuracy. For the first 10 games of this season, Big Ben was playing like an MVP candidate. The team was averaging nearly 30 points per game, and in their last 4 games, they have failed to even hit 20 points. Yeah. The offense can't run the ball. They can't protect him. And Big Ben, I hate to make fun of his name, but he's been coming up small recently. And he looked awful.
Yeah.
While they might have a championship-level defense, if that offense is not going to... that offense needs to get way better for them to have a chance. And I just don't know what the answer is at this point, because even when James Conner is healthy and back, I'm not convinced that James Conner is some game-changing running back. I mean, he's probably an upgrade for them, but I don't know. This team feels like a one and done in the postseason.
Yeah, it's setting up that way for sure. They are not, they peaked early, and now it feels like the Steelers are slipping. And the other thing too is I don't want to put it all on Ben Roethlisberger and the offense. The defense allowed the Cincinnati Bengals to score 27 points. I mean, that's crazy, and it just. I don't know. It's just that
there were some short drives, though. There were some short drives, some interceptions. There was a couple. I think there were 2 fumbles lost, and an interception that set up short fields. So you do don't want to let the defense off the hook, but
there is some offensive ineptitude there, because you look at their third down efficiency, and you're like, wow, the Bengals were 4 for 14. That's terrible. And then you go, oh wait, the Steelers were 4 for 16. So that's even worse. And so it just. It doesn't. If I'm a Steelers fan, I'm very worried, because not only is the number 1 seed pretty much fading out of sight, your division, your hold on the division that you've had this stranglehold on the division for 11 weeks, and it's now slipping away at the most crucial time. And the Ravens and the Browns have a chance of moving up and doing some damage to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and it's
just to add to the next week, the Browns play the Browns play the Jets, the Steelers play the Colts, and then the final week the Steelers play the Browns. So, is it unthinkable that the Browns could beat the Jets next? I know that the Jets are on a 1-game winning streak right now, and is it unthinkable that the Colts could beat the Steelers? And then in week 17, we have the 11-4 Steelers at that point versus the 11-4 Browns at that point, with a division on the line in week 17. That could easily be the storyline that we're talking about next week.
Yeah, absolutely. But we'll see what happens. All right, so our third story of the top 5 news stories in the NFL this week. The Chiefs, speaking of division leaders, Chiefs hold off the Saints in Drew Brees' return from a multi-week, every rib broken injury, collapsed lung, I don't know what else. And the Chiefs edged him out 32-29. This game, honestly, I didn't realize that Michael Thomas wasn't playing until kickoff. And as soon as I heard that, it was like, all right, well, this is a foregone conclusion. The Chiefs are going to win because Michael Thomas is probably the Saints' best player, arguably, with Alvin Kamara being 1 and 1A. But you look at their stat line and, the receivers, aside from Emmanuel Sanders, I mean, the Saints had nobody. They brought up 3 guys from the practice squad. They had a guy named Little Jordan Humphrey who caught 2 passes. Michael Burton had 1 pass. I mean, Jawan Johnson, Tommy Lee Lewis, like these guys, these are no names. Like, and you're playing against the best team in the league. And then Cameron Jordan got ejected for throwing a punch. So there's your best defensive player, maybe aside from Marshawn Lattimore. And it just, I mean, granted the score was close, but the game never really felt like it was out of hand for the Chiefs. And especially early on, I mean, Drew Brees you could see almost visibly the rust on him trying to be shaken off because they were an abomination in the first quarter.
So my take on this game is I have 2 takes. One, this is what I expected for the Chiefs. Another 3 touchdowns for Patrick Mahomes. The Chiefs are just, I don't know if anyone's stopping them this year. They just look great. And I remember early this offseason, I don't remember if it was Tyreek Hill or someone said that the Chiefs were going to win 7 Super Bowls.
It was Tyreek Hill.
And you and I were like, ha, 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 ha. How stupid do they sound? And I know they haven't even won the second one yet, but it just feels like how are they going to get worse? Like they're in a position where now when they go into the draft, they can just draft for need. They don't have to target anyone because they have all of their needs taken care of. They're just an amazing team that can win in so many different ways. The Saints, if I'm the Saints, I wouldn't be too upset about this loss. All the things you mentioned. No Michael Thomas, Drew Brees back. You're playing against the best team in the NFL, and you still only lose by 3 points. I'm not jumping for joy if I'm the Saints either, but I'm like, you know what? This is a loss I can take. When you consider this other thing here too, the time of possession, the Chiefs held the ball for 41 minutes and 11 seconds. The Saints held the ball for 18 minutes and 41 seconds. So when you consider the lopsidedness of the game, to only lose by 3 points with all the things that were going into there, I actually might be slightly encouraged if I was the Saints.
Yeah, there's a couple kind of fun thought bubbles I had in this game, and the one disheartening part was that Clyde Edwards-Helaire went down with a high ankle sprain, and the Chiefs were dominating this game with rushing. It was 179 yards to 60 for the Saints, which you would think with Latavius Murray and Alvin Kamara, it would be the other way around. But Le'Veon Bell showed up. He got hurt late, but he seemed like he was okay. And I'm not sure what, I think that they're going to be okay. The Saints, though, the 2 things that that started getting me thinking about the Saints was, one, what if Taysom Hill was the starter for this game? Would that have made a difference? I mean, Drew Brees ended up being decent. He was okay, 15 for 34, which is well below his season average of I think it's 73% completion percentage. 3 touchdowns, 1 bad interception. But he ended up being okay. But I do wonder if Taysom Hill was out there, if that added threat of the run would have been something that helped the Saints. And then the other thing is that, remember, in the 2017 draft, the Saints were the number 11 pick, and Sean Payton is on record as saying that they were going to pick Patrick Mahomes with the 11th pick, and then Andy Reid traded up and snaked him and took him at number 10. And if you start to think about what could have been and how the league could be changed, could be different, just 3 years later. There had to be some kind of thought, because they ended up taking Marshawn Lattimore instead, because that was
a great player.
He's great cornerback, but come on. Yeah. And Patrick Mahomes is the best player in the league right now, aside from maybe Aaron Donald. And it's just, I don't know. I had just so many thoughts about what if, where would they be? Would Drew Brees even be playing? It was still playing now. And I don't know. It's a lot of fun to just kind of watch them go head to head.
And I think that Drew Brees would have been traded probably to another organization, kind of similar to the way Alex Smith was traded.
The way he was traded for Phillip Rivers.
No, that's true. And I think that teams might want to take a page out of that playbook where you have a quarterback. If you're you're the Falcons, you're the Detroit Lions, you're the Saints, whomever, a team, maybe even the Titans, your team, you have a starting quarterback, he's okay, but you're not necessarily winning. Maybe you draft a quarterback in the first round when you don't really need to, and get yourself set up for the next year. And as far as the Taysom Hill, I had been hearing even before Drew Brees got back that Taysom Hill would be the better starter for the entire year. There's just no way they're going to disrespect Drew Brees like that and leave him on the bench. But it is an interesting thought.
All right. Story number 4 in the top 5 news stories from the NFL this week. The Miami Dolphins officially eliminate the New England Patriots from the postseason. And, this game felt like a little bit of a milestone for the Dolphins. They finally get over that hump that is the Patriots. And, the Patriots, I don't know. I don't even know what to say. I mean, they looked bad from top to bottom. I mean, Sony Michel was kind of the outstanding player. He only had 10 carries for 74 yards. Cam Newton needs to not be a starter anymore, in my opinion. I think he's done. He is a running quarterback who can't run anymore. So what do you do? James White, get him on a team that can win, flush the entire receiving core down the drain and just start over again. The Dolphins, Tua, he was pretty good, 20 of 26. He did have one interception. That they're just a good team. Xavier Howard, again, is just he should get Defensive Player of the Year votes. I'm not sure if he's going to, but this in the Kyle Van Noy revenge game, it was nice to see Xavier Howard kind of be a standout. Watch out for the Kyle Van Noy revenge game. You never know. And so the Dolphins, I'm happy for the Dolphins. I really am. They earned this one.
Yeah, you kind of took the words right out of my mouth. My first thing I wrote down is I feel so happy for the Dolphins. Since 2008, they only have one season in which they finished above 500. And in that same span, and in that same span, the Patriots have won 11 division titles.
Jeez.
So
I mean, it was a good run.
Yeah. So it was nice to see them finally kind of like knock the bully in the mouth and put him down for the count.
Yeah.
And in their season, I'm sure it felt extra good. Maybe not so much for all the players but for the ownership and just actually for the entire organization, and perhaps dare I say it, for the city of Miami. I don't know how. I mean, to just be in the shadow of such a large and successful organization for over a decade must have been just terrible. That said, I don't want to rain on their parade. I don't expect much from the Dolphins this postseason, but it doesn't really matter. I think they're playing with the house's money no matter what they do. They're the number 7 seed. If they get in, great. If they don't, they look like it looks positive for them in the future. And the same just can't be said for the Patriots. Nothing looks positive for them in the future. It's clear that Tom Brady was carrying this team last year. And it's obvious. You can see it. They just are devoid of talent on the offensive side of the ball. Their defense is good, I guess, but if your offense is not putting points on the board, we're just not in that. This is not the NFL of the 1980s where you can just have a dominant defense and have your offense just kind of take care of the ball. Like, you need to be able to put points on the board consistently, and they just can't do that. If I'm the Patriots, especially because they've won enough games where they're probably not going to get a high draft pick, I'm looking at trading for a guy like Sam Darnold, or maybe trading for Dak Prescott, or one of these young quarterbacks in the NFL, and take a shot on them and see. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the Patriots, I think that two things come to mind. I think that I feel sort of how I felt about Larry Fitzgerald maybe about 5-6 years ago is how I feel about Julian Edelman. Like, let him go to some place where he can win and be, not just flounder and kind of just fade into, irrelevancy.
Well, Super Bowls, so
he does. Well, he does, but I think he still has he still has a couple of years, good years left in him, and he's, because he's not Wes Welker. He doesn't have concussions. He's been banged up a little bit, but let him go and be an effective. Put him on the Saints. Just put him somewhere put him on the Packers. Just let him go be be productive somewhere else. He's put in his time. He's done what he can do. He's obviously, they're gonna waste what years he has left just kind of flounder around, and that goes even more so for Stephon Gilmore. Like, let him go. You can trade him and get a couple good draft picks, which is what the Patriots need everything basically except cornerback. Stephon Gilmore and then Jackson, their other cornerback, is unbelievable. But
they need a complete rebuild at this point. You're not winning anything with your cornerbacks being the best players on your team. That's just not going to fly.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it was a good run, but it's nice to see that the Dolphins kind of it almost feels like, in the spirit of Christmas, it feels like, when Ralphie and the Christmas Story starts beating up the bully, like you said, it's just, I had that image, I guess, that 'tis the season, but it's nice to see them kind of stand up for themselves. And they almost lost it too. That game early on, they were teetering a little bit, but they pulled it out. So good for them. Finally, fifth story in our top 5 news stories this week. Sort of a combo platter. It's the NFC West in its totality, and we already touched on the Rams inexplicably losing to the Jets. The Seahawks, narrowly beat the Washington football team, but a win is a win is a win. And the Cardinals, in what was the best game of the weekend, in my opinion, the Cardinals hold off the Eagles in the battle for Oklahoma with Jalen Hurts and Kyler Murray. This was
sounds like an old Western.
Yeah, well, that's what it was. It was a shootout. That's exactly. I mean, it was perfect. It was everything just sort of, the Cardinals are a good team. The Seahawks take the division lead back, and the Seahawks defense looks like it's starting to come around again. That Jamal Adams trade is starting to look like it's paying dividends. He by the way has the most sacks for a defensive back in NFL history in a season, and he still has 2 games to go. I think he's 8.5 now.
Did not know that.
Yeah, he is. I mean, unbelievable. And so this, just in its totality, it's just interesting how, a week ago we thought that the Rams were going to be just dominating this division and running away with it, and all of a sudden everything is, except for your 49ers. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But
no.
Yeah, it's just interesting how 1 week an entire division can get shaken up.
Well, yeah, when you lose a game that you're not supposed to lose to the Jets, I mean, the fact of the matter is the Rams were supposed to take care of business and they didn't. Seattle and the Cards, they did take care of their business. And here we are, the Rams, who looked like they were going to win the division, this coming week they play Seattle, and then in week 17 they play the Cardinals. So they could be looking at being in 3rd place in the division when we're all said and done. I still think they're going to make the playoffs, so probably won't be that big of a deal, but they go from being a number 3 or number 4 seed to being a number 7 seed.
Yeah.
And not getting any home games. And that can be difficult, especially when your quarterback is Jared Goff and needs all the advantages that he can get. I don't really know what else to say. The Cardinals did what they do. I'm gonna back off a little bit on Jalen Hurts. I know that we're not quite talking about the Eagles right now, but we're talking about the Cards game. Listen, he's getting the job done. 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. I've got to back off this guy. Obviously, he's got more talent than I thought, and we'll just continue to see.
I would just like to point out and reflect back on my preseason idea before the draft that the Cowboys should have drafted Jalen Hurts and kept Dak on a franchise deal this year. And we're starting to see why I said that, because Jalen Hurts he appears to be the winner that I thought he was. And by the way, Kyler Murray and Jalen Hurts both threw for 3 touchdowns and ran for another touchdown. That's incredible. I don't even know. I would love to know if that's, there's got to be some kind of crazy stat there. But yeah,
I mean, the one thing I was to say about the I'm not sure of the draft order. I don't remember at the top of my head, but Jalen Hurts was taken in the 2nd round, which was ahead of where most people had him slotted to go. I don't know if the Eagles picked before the Cowboys in the 2nd round or not. I don't think so. I think the Cowboys would have picked before then, but basically they would have had to spend one of their top 2 picks in a year where they expected to contend. I think if he was there in the 3rd or 4th round, they would have taken him, but in the 2nd round, it's tough to go after him, I think. But
yeah, Jalen Hurts was taken 53rd overall in the 2nd round, and yeah, the Cowboys had a. I don't think the Cowboys actually had a 2nd round pick. Oh, yeah, yes, they did. No, yeah, they did at 51. Yeah, so they were 2 spots ahead.
They were 2 spots ahead.
They took Trayvon Diggs, so.
And he's been a good corner. He's been a good corner for them, right?
Yes.
So,
yes.
I mean, he's been good.
Who's been more impactful for their team thus far? In 2 games, Jalen Hurts has eclipsed anything that Trayvon Diggs has done this year.
They've won 1 game. They've won 1 game, I guess.
Who was one of the second best team in the NFC after just being god awful for the rest of the year. But either way, I as a growing up a Cowboys fan, the Eagles are essentially anathema, but I root for Jalen Hurts, and it's a very weird position. It almost feels like he's on my fantasy team, where it's like I'm just rooting for him. Like, I'm not rooting for the team. I just want Jalen Hurts to do well because I just like his story. I think he's just got a great attitude. And but yeah, we'll see. So NFC West, who knows what's going to happen? 2 more weeks and we'll see. We do have a little bonus coverage. There's our top 5 news stories, but then there's 5A, I guess. And this happened on Thursday, so we weren't sure if we were going to include it or not. But the Raiders, I just want to touch on the Raiders for a second, because this to me is a big story, even though it's a little bit, past its prime at this point, a couple days, almost a week later. But the Raiders lost to the Chargers, and I don't know what, this is the second year in a row, back-to-back years. They went 6-4 and then just have fallen flat on their face again. And we were talking pre-show. I don't know where this is coming from, because if you look at the Raiders from top to bottom, they're a good team. I mean, their skill position players are fantastic. Derek Carr is a above average quarterback. I don't think he's certainly not elite, but he's okay. Good. John Gruden, same thing. I think he's an above average coach, but they're just falling apart for another season in a row.
Well, the falling apart started before they lost Derek Carr to injury this past week with Marcus Mariota coming in. Yeah, I tend to think I'm putting a lot of the blame on the defense. It just feels like the defense has kind of fallen apart in back-to-back years down the stretch.
Yeah.
I don't know, and they did fire the defensive coordinator. I don't know why that's happening. It is something to look into. If you look at them on defense, they spent the number 4 overall pick on Cleveland Farrell a year ago. He hasn't really lived up to that draft pedigree. They don't really have a lot of impact players on defense, which you probably can blame them, right? They can blame themselves because they traded away Khalil Mack. But that's kind of what I'm looking at. Like, they need someone on defense to step up and make a play, and they haven't had that player.
Yeah, but I think that Khalil Mack trade, I think that got them Josh Jacobs and Henry Ruggs, if I'm not mistaken. So I mean, you can't say that it wasn't a bad
trade. I was never like against that trade to begin with, because I don't think you win by having the highest paid defensive player in the NFL. I don't think that's necessarily a recipe for victory. But that's just a philosophy thing. It just felt like, okay, you don't want to pay him, so go out and get 2 draft picks. It's just, when you waste a number 4 overall pick on a player who doesn't have an impact on your defense, you kind of have to question the draft pick. And I think that's the team is just devoid of impact defensive players. And that's just bad.
Abram is good. He's a good safety. But
Max Crosby, he was decent, but he's kind of having a down year. I don't know.
Yeah, I would agree. And, the other thing from this game that I took away was, Justin Herbert, I mean, he's going to shatter some rookie records for yards and probably touchdowns. I think he's tied with Baker right now, and there's still 2 weeks to go. And the funny thing is, I mean, what did he start? He started week 4, I think.
No, he was week 2, because remember Tyrod Taylor?
Right. That's right. Week
he
2.
got
so he's still down. He's still down a week. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny. Just like Jalen Hurts and Kyler Murray, it was a battle for Oklahoma. All of a sudden we see Justin Herbert going against Marcus Mariota in the battle for Oregon. It's pretty funny. And I was proud of Marcus Mariota. I really was. I was happy to see him get out there, because obviously he's been a back. I didn't even realize he was on the Raiders. I thought he was still. I think he was on the Rams for a little while. I didn't know where he was, and then they trotted him out there, and I was like, oh wow, look at Marcus Mariota. And then all of a sudden, he just went off. I mean, he had 88 yards rushing, a touchdown. I mean, he looked, for somebody coming in cold off the bench, I thought he played exceptionally well.
Yeah, I mean, he was okay. He was good. He had one just terrible interception that basically cost them the game. But he did what he's supposed to do as a backup. Give your team a chance to win.
Yeah, and he just reminded me, it was the first time I've seen him since Oregon that he looked like the quarterback he was at Oregon. That was, the quarterback that was selected, number 2 overall in that draft. So,
absolutely,
it's nice to see him at least getting some. I don't think he's a starter, but I think as a backup, he's certainly more than capable.
And that's important. That's very important.
Yes, yeah, as we've seen. Yep. So, all right, that'll do it for the top 5 news stories this week. We have to take a break. We're going to come back. We have to go through our the extra point, which is 1-sentence recap of every game in the NFL because we don't have time to touch on them all in this first bit. We have to play Make the Mistake or Give Me a Break. And then coming up in hour 2, we have some NBA, and we have to look at the week's casino race. So we have a lot to get to. So stick around. We'll be right back on the Benchwarmerz podcast.
If you think or know you had COVID-19, you can be around others after 10 days since symptoms first appeared, and after 24 hours with no fever without fever-reducing medication, and after other symptoms have improved. If you have tested positive for COVID-19 and you had no symptoms, you can be around others 10 days after you got tested for COVID-19. To learn more, visit cdc.gov/coronavirus.
Welcome back to the Benchwarmers podcast, where being all talk is actually a good thing. Now, back to the action. Or talk, I guess.
Welcome back to the program, everybody. I am still Lou Ruggieri. That is still Jose Ortiz. And this is still the Benchwarmers podcast. Appreciate you taking some time to spend it with us. We just touched on the top 5 news stories in the NFL, according to Jose and myself. And those are the only ones that matter. But now we have to go and move forward. We have not a lot of time, so I'm going to just jump right into it and skip all the extra stuff and get to the extra point. The extra point is just a 1-sentence recap of all the games in the NFL this week. And so just game by game, Jose, I'm going to throw a game out to you. Give me your 1-sentence kind of reflection on each game.
Okay.
Chargers over the Raiders, 30-27.
Just basically the Raiders. I'm sorry. 1 sentence. This is so much to say.
Mm-hmm.
Raiders need to draft a quarterback this offseason and improve the talent in their quarterback room.
I have Raiders shocked by Mariota's game, but Chargers have too much juice.
Okay.
Bills crushing the Broncos 48-19.
Bills are the only team maybe in the AFC that have a legit chance at challenging the Chiefs.
To continue with our quoting of coaches in this show, which we did a little bit earlier in the previous segment, both the Bills and the Broncos, they are who they thought who we thought they were, according to Denny Green.
Dennis Green.
Bills, AFC contender, Broncos pretender.
Yeah.
Panthers losing to the Packers 24-16.
Wait. You said the Packers? Did you say the Broncos or the Packers lost to the Panthers? The Panthers lost to the Packers. I'm sorry, I misheard you.
Packers over the Panthers.
Packers over the Panthers. It felt like the Packers didn't even have to try. It was way too easy. Way too easy to win.
My extra point. Even at age 37, Aaron Rodgers is having a career year. You have 40 touchdowns. Unbelievable. The Colts edging out the Texans 27-20.
The Colts are the best mediocre team in football.
That's good. How's it going? I have a good team beats a good individual every time.
Yeah.
And I have to wonder, just as a side note, and I don't want to get into it, but just imagine if Deshaun Watson was on the Colts. Yeah. It just, I feel so bad for him, but whatever. I don't want to, but I digress. All right. Titans crushing the Lions 46-25.
Derrick Henry has a legitimate shot at 2,000 yards rushing. He has 1,676 yards right now.
My 1-sentence recap and the extra point. Adrian Peterson passes the torch to Henry as the most unstoppable force in the NFL.
Okay, we're talking about the same guy.
It wasn't long ago that Adrian Peterson was doing exactly what Derrick Henry's doing right now. And yet another stiff arm. Just live in infamy. My God, he's just He's so much fun to watch.
He's a tank that runs 4.5. Yeah.
And Ryan Tannehill vulturing 2 touchdowns from him too, by the way. Thanks for that, Ryan Tannehill. All right, Bears edging out the Vikings 33-27.
A meaningless win and a lost season for the Bears.
I have outside of the Packers, why does no one want to be good in the NFC North? they just terrible. All right, Seahawks over the Washington football team 20-15.
So my one sentence takeaway here is Washington is going to be a tough out this postseason.
And my one sentence takeaway in the extra point: a win is a win is a win.
Yeah.
It wasn't pretty, but as we see, the Seahawks, all they had to do was just have one more point than the football team. The Patriots losing to the Dolphins 22-12.
It was just nice to see it. To reiterate basically the same thing I said before. It's nice to see the Dolphins finally on top of the Patriots.
I have Cam and the Patriots had a good run, but everybody stumbles sometimes.
I guess my second sentence would have been the dynasty is officially over for New England, but it's fine. When you say good run, it kind of triggered another thought in my mind.
Yeah, there's a little play on words there.
Yep.
The Ravens just embarrassing the Jaguars 40-14.
Finally, the Ravens we've expected have shown up.
I echo that sentiment. All I have is better late than never, Ravens.
Yeah.
I agree wholeheartedly. All right, extra point, and we're just going through rapid fire every game, one sentence recap. The Buccaneers beating the Falcons 31-27.
This game was way too close for comfort.
Yeah, I agree. So I have an analogy, actually, as my one sentence recap. Eli Manning is to Tom Brady as Tom Brady is to Matt Ryan. It's just the guy that's just going to haunt him in his dreams.
Oh, yes.
And, because the Falcons were up again on Tom Brady big. I think it was like 24-7 or something. Yeah. And sure enough, Tom Brady mounts yet another comeback and puts Matt Ryan he's going to be in his nightmares for the rest of his life. The 49ers losing to the Cowboys in a shootout, 41-33.
I'm happy to get a better draft pick as a 49ers fan.
I have how the mighty have fallen irrelevant.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, this was my low light of the week. I know we have a highlight and a low light of the week. My low light is the 49ers and Cowboys game getting flexed. And it hurts so much because this is, not only is these are our two childhood teams that we rooted for playing against each other, but this game used to mean
mean
for
something.
The championship.
This was
the
something.
NFC championship, for years.
Yep.
And now it's getting flexed because it's too meaningless to even put on primetime television.
Yeah. Yeah.
Eagles losing to the Cardinals. Cardinals beating the Eagles 33-26.
Cardinals took care of business. Jalen Hurts is better than I thought he was. I just want to add in. I forgot to give you my low light of the week, which was the Dolphins, with the Patriots being officially eliminated from contention, and now kind of going into rebuild mode.
Yep. Okay. So Cardinals beating the Eagles. My one sentence recap. In the Battle of Oklahoma, it was Jalen that fell a little short.
Okay.
Little Kyle Murray shot there, which, by the way, this game had both of my highlights for the week. I couldn't pick one, but it was Jalen Hurts puts on a heck of an encore. And also, DeAndre Hopkins is the best receiver in the league. He has the best hands I've ever seen. He had 2 or 3 catches in this game that were just unbelievable. And he's amazing.
I think Devontae Adams might have something to say about that, but
he can say whatever he wants, but he cannot make the same catches that DeAndre Hopkins has made. All right. The Jets shocking the Los Angeles Rams 23-20.
How do you lose to the Jets? That's it. That's my question. That's my sentence. How do you lose to the Jets?
My one sentence recap. Only the Jets can win and somehow still lose.
Yeah. Yeah.
Chiefs edging out the Saints 32-29.
So no one is stopping the Chiefs this season. That's my one sentence, and that's also my highlight of the week. The Chiefs don't really make it into the highlight of the week because they just kind of take care of business. It's like the sun rising. You don't even think about it, but they just handle business. And honestly, they look to be head and shoulders better than anyone else in the NFL to me.
Yeah, I mean that's Travis Kelce. I think is leading the league in yards reception.
He might be.
Right now.
He might be there, right there, or close to it. Oh, look, I'm going to bet that right
easily,
now.
He's going to shatter the single season reception record set by George Kittle a couple years ago.
He's second behind DeAndre Hopkins. He's got 1,300.
Oh yeah, because DeAndre Hopkins had like 146 yards this week. That's right.
Stephon Diggs is third at 1,314. Wow. Okay.
Yep. So my one sentence recap in the extra point: the Chiefs over the Saints. Without their best player, the Saints marched into battle and held their own. So I thought it was a good show. A good show without Michael Thomas, but it went as expected. The Browns beating the Giants 20-6.
With the Browns are one win away from having their most wins since 1994, and they play the Jets next week.
My one sentence recap: Baker, playoff maker. Finally,
I like that.
Yeah. Finally, the Steelers somehow losing to the Bengals 17-27.
The Steelers are not going to win a postseason game this year. They're not winning a playoff game.
Wow. My recap: the Steelers became the Bungles this week. It's funny how they just kind of unfortunate, but yeah. So that's our one sentence recap, the extra point, going through all the games. So let's jump right into make no mistake or give me a break. This is true false. We have a series of 3 statements that we're going to make to each other, and the answer is going to be either make no mistake, which is to say that's absolutely true, or give me a break. That's ridiculous. You're crazy. So, Jose, would you like to kick or receive?
Okay, I only have 2 this week right now because the other 2 I had 2 more, but we've already talked about it so much that I don't need to bring them up again. So, Number 1, the Cleveland Browns are Super Bowl contenders.
I mean, I'm gonna say I feel like I have to say make no mistake at this point because they seem to have the right formula. They play solid defense and they're running the ball. Their run game leads the way for their passing game, and that's the only way that you're going to beat Patrick Mahomes is by keeping him on the bench. So it's crazy to say, but I think that they do have a chance. And this, by the way, is our moral lesson for the week. It actually comes from Michael Jordan, who was a state over. But in regards to the Cleveland Browns, Jordan said, "I've failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed." And just this week, it just felt, between Hugh Jackson and then Freddie Kitchens, especially with Freddie Kitchens on the opposite sideline this week, I think he's the offensive. He was filling in as the offensive coordinator for the Giants. It was like, wow, look at what the difference a year can make for the Browns. So I'm going to say make no mistake.
I'm also saying make no mistake. I think they like you said, they have the recipe, they have the pieces. If they can execute execute well on the game plan, they have a chance. All right, my last one is Josh Allen deserves to be given a large contract, whatever that number is, but he deserves a large franchise quarterback contract.
Yeah, make no mistake. I mean, he does. He's proven it. His year 3, it looks like the game is starting to come to him. It's starting to get easier. His efficiency has rocketed up. And it's incredible because I don't think I've ever seen somebody who's taken that big of a jump in their completion percentage in 1 year. But he's doing it. And maybe it was, Stephon Diggs. Maybe it's a year more of experience. Maybe it's those things combined and more. But he's earned his paycheck for sure.
4,000 yards, 30 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. And that's not including any of his rushing stuff. He's been great this year. He deserves to get paid. The only reason I asked that question is I know you're a little skeptical on paying guys. I wasn't sure if he rose to the level of, he deserves to get paid.
I mean, deserves. I mean, would I pay him? That's a different question. But
Okay,
I think
fair.
that the way that the NFL is set up and the way that things are going, I think that he, with the way things are, he has earned that next payday.
Okay.
I have a problem with the way the quarterbacks get paid, period. But that's for a different day. All right. So my 2, make no mistake, or give me a break. If the Eagles actually make the playoffs, they're going to ruin someone's postseason.
Give me a break. I don't think the Eagles are a good team. I'm still not bought in on Jalen Hurts. He's better than I thought through 2 games.
But if they
I
win
don't
the
think this is a
division,
good team.
if they win a division, they get a home. They're home.
I understand. That means they're going to play, the Seahawks or the
Bucks,
the Bucks or the Cardinals. I just don't think they're a good team.
I'm gonna say, make no mistake. If they actually manage to make the playoffs, I could see them beating the Bucks. The way the Bucks play, and how inconsistent they can be, I could see the Eagles playing up that same old underdog card and just riding it into the second round of the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it.
Okay. Second, make no mistake, or give me a break. Aaron Rodgers will be the only carryover quarterback in the NFC North in 2021.
I'm going to say give me a break only because I think Kirk Cousins is still on the team, on the Vikings next year. They did extend him this offseason. I don't know what his dead cap money is, but I do think Mitch Trubisky is obviously gone, and they're going to move heaven and earth to try and trade Matthew Stafford.
I agree from top to bottom, everything you just said, because I think Kirk Cousins is just too expensive to get rid of. Otherwise, I think this is true.
And he's still an above-average quarterback. He's still like a top 15 quarterback, or in that 10 to 15.
Yeah, I guess. I think he's towards the bottom of that number, but
they're like that 13 to 15 range. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. Yeah, we'll see. I think he's more like 15, 16. Honestly, I think he's right on the. He's like the Mendoza line for quarterbacks. Like he might be the line. Honestly.
Well, when we do our season in NFL season in review later, in the coming weeks, we'll have to take a look at who the top 10 quarterbacks are.
Yeah, we'll rank them. Sure. All right, so that's going to do it. Make no mistake, or give me a break. We touched on our highlights and lowlights, and so we got to take a break. We're up against the clock here. Coming up in hour number 2, we have to look ahead to Week 16. We have to look back on our Week 15 picks and see how we did. We have our sports bet, put your money where your mouth is, and see how we did with our betting lines in Week 15, and make some for Week 16. But next, we have to switch gears because it's NBA season, and it's this week. It's here. So we have to talk some Western Conference preview. We have to go through some contract signings and extensions. And even we're going to make our NBA Finals pick because it's the last time we can do it before the season starts. So stick around. We're going to have that and more after this on the Benchwarmerz podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Benchwarmers Podcast. Follow along with us on the Benchwarmers Podcast on Facebook and Instagram. And don't forget to review us on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts.